Hello everyone, welcome to this video. My name is Rudd, and today I'm going to be talking about something that has been requested of me for a long time, and that is I'm going to be explaining exactly how to play the game of Chaotic. For those of you who've never played before, I know it can seem kind of daunting. There's lots of different card types and there's lots of strategy that goes into it. But I want to take this time to break it down as simple as possible so that if you've never played before, after this video, you can jump into a match. Before I begin, there's some resources I want to share with you because they can be really helpful. The first of them being the Chaotic Discord channel. If you're not on there already, I highly recommend you join it. I'll include a link to it in the description. But on the Discord channel, there is a resources tab right here. And here you can find a rule book, and also this person wrote a guide that addresses some of the holes in the rule book. And so this is super helpful if you have a specific question and you want to get a more in-depth understanding of the game. Also, there is a ruling questions tab on here. You can pretty much come on here and ask any question you may have, and there's tons of super helpful people on the Discord channel, and they'll pop in and give you an answer. So I've used that a lot and it's been super helpful, so I just wanted to include that for you. Also, if you're looking for a specific card, there is another link I will include that is a backup of the old Chaotic website that has a full list of all the cards, and you can search them by type, like basically anything about the card. You can search and you can find it if you're trying to build your deck. So with that, let's jump into the deck building process. So I'll be showing you guys how to build a deck on chaoticrecode.com, and that's where most people play these days, and I highly recommend it to anyone who wants to jump in and play. It's an awesome website. But with that, I'm going to be showing you guys this deck, which I named Galmadar after this creature. But I should mention that there are varying levels of strategy, and there's several different abilities and stats that go into Chaotic, and there's no clear-cut way to show you an exact path of how to build your deck. So I'm just going to show you my thinking, and it's going to be a brief overview, and then after that I'm going to jump into a match and I'm going to show you guys how the deck actually functions. So if you feel lost at any point, don't worry. I do hope to cover everything, and hopefully it'll all tie back in together in the end. But with that being said, I'm going to start with the different card types. There's 5 of them. The first is creatures. The second is Battlegears. The third is attacks. The fourth is locations. And the fifth is Mugics. So in a standard deck that we use on chaoticrecode.com, we use 6 creatures. So there's 3 in the front row, there's 2 in the middle row, and there's 1 in the back row. And then when you go against your opponent, they will have 3 in their front row facing your 3, 2 behind that, and 1 behind that. So the ultimate objective in Chaotic is to use your creatures in combat one at a time. So you may choose one of your creatures to attack one of their creatures, and you will battle, and the winner stays on the board and the loser is eliminated from the board, that creature card. And in the end, your objective is to eliminate all of the other players, the opposing players' creatures. So with that being said, let's jump into what are some of the abilities of the creatures and why might you choose some of them. So with this deck, I chose to use creatures that have high power in the earth element. And I'll get to why I did that in a second, but let's just jump into this one. This is Lord Van Bloot, one of my favorite creatures. I chose him because I like this creature. He has good stats, and I wanted to build a deck around him. So Lord Van Bloot, if you'll notice, is a red card, which means he is an underworld creature. And on the bottom left side, you will see some numbers. You'll see a heart with 75, that is his courage. You'll see a lightning bolt with 115, that is his power. You'll see an eyeball with 50, that is his wisdom, and you will see a green dash with 95, that is his speed. Below that, you will see a 2. I'll get to what that means later. And on the right side, you will see a bunch of circles, but one of them is filled in with some green mountains. That means he has the earth element. And then below that, you will see 65. That is his energy, or some people may call that health, but within Chaotic, it's called energy. So those are his stats, and then in the middle, you will see his ability, which reads, if the opposing creature's courage is less than 65, that creature loses 10 energy. So that's pretty straightforward. Again, I'll get to the specifics of how it works later, but you can kind of get a gist for how he works, that if Lord Van Bloot was in combat with another creature and that creature's courage, the little heart symbol, was lower than 65, it would lose 10 energy. Again, that's the number in the bottom right. It would lose 10 of that. So you already would have an advantage over him. So that's just one example of a creature showing some of his stats and his ability and why you may choose to have that creature within your deck. So Galmadar is going to have his own unique stats and his own ability, and Agitos is going to have his own stats and ability. Same for Navenna. They're all gonna vary, and you're gonna choose them for varying reasons. So creatures are going to be equipped with one Battlegear card. So Lord Van Bloot, I chose to equip him with the Drill Dozer. The Drill Dozer reads, equipped creature has an additional 10 energy. So that number 65 in the bottom right, his energy, it's gonna go up to 75. But if you'll keep reading, it says, if equipped creature has Earth, it has an additional 10 energy. So you go back to Lord Van Bloot, since he does have Earth, it's not only going to go up to 75, it's going to go all the way up to 85 because he's equipped with that battle gear that is boosting him. So again, same as the creatures, there's tons of different battle gears, and it's kind of impossible to explain what they all can do, but you'll just have to read them and get a sense for what the card is saying and what ability it's going to give your creature. And then that's where the strategy comes in, choosing which battle gears to equip to which creatures. Next, let's talk about locations. These are the location cards. You know they're locations because they are green and they're sideways like landscape. And when it is your turn, you will draw a new location at random and it will be in play, and that battle for that round will take place at that location. So you want to choose locations that are obviously beneficial to you. So let's just take Silchaw's Mine, for example. I chose this because the ability for this location reads, attacks that would deal more than 20 damage to creatures with Earth deal 20 damage instead. So I chose this because let's say I was in combat with Lord Van Bloot and Silchaw's Mine was the active location. If someone tried to do like say 50 damage to Lord Van Bloot, then the location would kick in and it would cut that 50 down to 20 because like it said, basically no one can do more than 20 damage to a creature with Earth. So that's why I chose that location. And the same thing as the creatures and the battle gears, there's just a wide variety of abilities that locations have, and it's kind of impossible to run through them all, but you'll just kind of get a feel for them over time. You'll also notice on the location it says Initiative Courage. All that means is that when that becomes the active location, the person that gets to attack first, the person who gets that initiative, is the one with the highest courage. So all of these have a variety of initiatives and abilities, but I'll get to that later when we actually get into a match. Now, let's say I chose Lord Van Bloot to engage another creature in combat, and Silchaw's Mine was the active location. Now, what happens is each creature is going to take turns going back and forth, one at a time, playing attack cards. Now, these are the attack cards, and you know these are the attack cards because they are dark gray and they have those numbers in the top left. Now, within your deck, you have to have 20 attack cards, and the attack cards have to equal 20 build points. Build points is the number in the top left of this card. So see, this is 1 build point, this one is 0 build points, and this one is 2 build points. So total, all of these 20 cards have to equal 20 build points. That's kind of how chaotic decks are kept somewhat fair, because you can't just put the best possible attacks in there that deal a ton of damage every time because they cost more to put in your deck. So with that being said, each creature is going to go back and forth choosing attack cards to play against the other creature. So let's say it was my turn and I wanted to play Earth Pulse. You'll see some numbers there on the bottom of the card. You'll see a 0, you'll see some grayed out blocks, and then you'll see the Earth element with 15. This simply put means if you have the earth element, you can deal 15 damage if you play this card. So if Lord Van Bloot played this card, he's going to deal 15 damage. That attack card is pretty straightforward. Moving on to a different one. Again, I can't possibly explain all of these, but I'll show you some just so you get a general idea. Ectospasm. This one costs 0 build points by that number in the top left. And then it has an ability down at the bottom that says stat check power 50, deal 5 damage. That says what it sounds like. Check your stats, and if you have 50 power or better, you can deal 5 damage to the opposing creature. So if Lord Van Bloot played this attack, you'll see his power is 115, so he has more than enough. He would deal 5 damage, which is not bad. I'll show you one more attack. This one is Power Pulse. It costs 2 build points by that number in the top left. Now you'll see in that big block in the bottom it says 10. That is the base damage that the card is going to do. Now, regardless of if you have the element, if you have the right stat, anything, this doesn't require anything of you. Any creature that plays this card is going to deal at least 10. That's what that big number in that big block means. So this one, 0, no guarantees there. But this one, you're at least going to do 10 regardless of what creature you have playing it. But it's also going to say, challenge, power 15, deal 10 damage. That is doing what it sounds like, which is take your power, compare it to the other person's power. If you have 15 more power than them, you deal an additional 10 damage. So if Lord Van Bloot was playing this against a person that only had 100 power, since he has 115, it would be 15 more than that other creature. And he's going to deal not only 10 damage by that base number, but also the additional 10 damage, dealing 20 total damage. Now you can kind of see already, I've chosen these attacks strategically because I want them to focus on the high power that my creatures have and also the earth element. So when you're building your attack deck, that's how you know what cards you want to choose. You're going to want to choose ones that are going to be successful when played by your creature. Now, if you're brand new to Chaotic, I bet that confused you at least just a little bit because there are lots of abilities and things that go into attacks that, same as the other cards, you kind of just learn over time. But hopefully, just like the other things, it gives you a base of knowledge that can help you start. Now, the last card that we have to talk about are Mugic cards. Mugics within the show are like these combinations of music and magic that certain creatures had the ability to use, and it would do a wide variety of things. So these cards are kind of like wild cards. They can do pretty much anything, and you can play them at just about any time. So let's just take one and we'll walk through what it does. So let's take this one, Cannon of Casualty. It's pretty straightforward. You're going to see that it has red blocks, a red Mugic symbol in the top left. All of that red is showing you that this is a underworld Mugic, meaning it can only be played by underworld creatures. You'll see on the bottom of the card there is one Mugic symbol, that little circle, and then below that it's going to say deal 20 damage to target creature. So let's say I was in a battle using Lord Van Bloot against someone else, and that other creature only had 20 health left, and I wanted to reduce its energy, its health, down to 0 and eliminate it from the game. What I could do is I could play Cannon of Casualty. I would have that card in my hand and I could simply play it. Now, what it's telling me is that it's going to cost me 1 Mugic counter, that little circle down in the bottom. Now, Lord Van Bloot, if you'll see on his card in the bottom left, he has that number 2 inside of the Mugic symbol. That means he has 2 Mugic counters that he can use. So if I wanted to play this card, it's going to cost me 1 of those. He will go from 2 down to 1. And then he can play this card, and I can choose the target creature I want and deal 20 damage to that creature. Pretty straightforward. And just like the other cards, there are a wide variety of them and a wide variety of abilities. For instance, if you take this one, you'll see there's 2 Mugic symbols in the bottom there, meaning it costs 2 Mugic counters. So they can vary. If Lord Van Blute wanted to play this and it was the beginning of the game and he had 2 Mugic counters left, sure, he could play it. But let's say he only had 1 Mugic counter left because you already spent 1, he wouldn't be able to play this because it costs 2 Mugic counters. But just like the other cards, again, there's a wide variety of abilities, and it's, I'm not going to jump into all of them today, but hopefully we can jump into a match and I can show you how these cards work all together and how a game flows, and so you can get a better understanding of them. One last thing I'm not sure if I mentioned was the number of cards in your deck. You will have 6 creatures. Each will have a Battlegear attached to them, 20 attacks, 10 locations, and 6 Mugics. So I'm now going to jump into a match and I'm going to show you guys exactly how the gameplay itself works. This is probably one of the best ways I can recommend you learn the game, by going on Chaotic Recode and just jumping into a match. You'll very quickly learn how to play the game. And there are great decks that are already built for you with their own specific strategies. For instance, the deck that I'll be going against right now, this Overworld Water deck, it's already pre-built in Chaotic Recode. So you could simply choose that deck, jump into a match, and learn how to play that way. But with that being said, I'm going to show you guys how to play. And again, this is going to be sort of an overview of what's going on, but hopefully it'll give you enough information so that you know how to play. So it's going to prompt you at the top when it's your turn what you can do, and then it's going to highlight things in red. So for instance, it's telling me I can play a Mugic, activate an ability, or I can simply pass. So for now, let's just pass. And if you'll notice, this has popped up in the bottom right. So my opponent has activated this location. And if you go to the logs tab over here, it'll tell you everything that's going on exactly. So Banshore Baker revealed a new active location, which is the Riverlands. And you'll see it here in the bottom right. And like we talked about earlier, this location is going to have its own specific initiative and its own abilities. And these abilities are hopefully going to shift the battle in whoever drew that location's favor. So my opponent drew this location and it reads Initiative Wisdom. So the person with the highest wisdom will be able to play the first attack. If a creature deals water damage, Riverlands heals 5 energy to that creature. So if you'll notice, my opponent has lots of water creatures. So that's probably why they chose that location. My opponent can now choose who they want to attack. You can only attack creatures that are adjacent to you. So for instance, if you wanted to use Somnort could attack any one of these creatures on the front row. But this Isili card here on the bottom could only attack these 2 cards because they're the only ones that are adjacent to it. So let's say that he wanted to be straightforward and Somnort attacked Lord Van Blute. These 2 are now engaged in battle and they're going to fight until one of them is eliminated. So my opponent, this person, won the initiative because if you'll notice again, the initiative is wisdom. So you look up here, Somnort has 65 wisdom. Lord Van Blute only has 50. So since he had higher wisdom, he wins the initiative and he gets to attack first. You can also check these stats and everything in the bottom right down here. It's going to show you everything. So it's now that person's turn to choose what they want to do. And then it's my turn. And again, it's going to tell me in the top what I can do here. I can play a Mugic, activate an ability, or pass. I'm simply going to pass for now. And now my opponent gets to choose an attack. So I'm going to have them play an attack. And then when it's my turn, I'll explain sort of how it works. So my opponent played an attack. I can respond to it. Instead, I'm going to pass. I'm going to let it happen. And if you'll see down here, I went from 80 down to 85 energy. My opponent still has 55 of 55 energy. So I lost some, but I'm still doing okay. It is now my turn. And if you'll notice, another attack card just popped up here. So your attack cards are going to be drawn by the computer randomly for you out of your deck. And you can have a maximum of 3 in your hand at a time. But when you have those 3, it's up to you. You can choose which ones to play. So for now, I can look at these and I can see which of these are going to help me deal the most damage or benefit me in the strategy that I'm going for. And right now I am just trying to do the most damage because I want to eliminate that creature. So this is an attack that we talked about earlier, Earth Pulse. Super straightforward. Again, it just does 15 earth damage. So because Lord Van Bloot does have the element earth, if I play this, it's going to deal 15 damage. So I play it. I can add to it. This is all part of the burst. I know it's kind of complicated, but basically it's giving each of us a chance to respond to that attack. My opponent chose to pass, chose to let that attack happen, and he went down from 55 all the way down to 40. Now you may be wondering, why is it asking you to pass, or if you want to play an ability or a Mugic. Basically, you can play a Mugic sometimes that may block an attack. You may play an ability that may block an attack or boost it. So it's just giving you an opportunity within that burst to respond to it if there's another action you want to take. So it may seem kind of confusing, but most of the time, you just end up passing because there's nothing you really want to do at that specific moment. So now my opponent gets to play another attack. So we'll actually dive into this one and we'll see what this attack does and why it deals the damage it does. So if you go to the burst, you can see my opponent just played Riptide. Riptide has 5 base damage, so it's guaranteed to do that much, and it has 5 water damage. So it's going to deal a grand total of 10 damage. But it also reads water. Opposing engaged creature loses 25 courage. So it's saying if you have the element water, the opposing player is going to lose 25 courage. Remember, courage is that element that has the heart by it. So I have 75 right now. If he plays this Riptide and it goes through, I'm going to lose that 25 courage. But it's also worth checking your opponent may have a Battlegear that is helping, like this Torrent Crinth. Torrent Crinth reads, equipped creature gains water 5, which means water attacks deal an additional 5 damage. So I know that's a lot to take in, but if you consider all those factors, it's going to deal 5 base damage, 5 water damage. Because of his Battlegear, he's dealing an additional 5 water damage. So we're up to 15 damage. On top of all of that, I'm going to lose 25 courage because he has the water element. So all of that is going to culminate into this one attack, and all of these things are going to happen unless I have a way to block it. I do not, so I let it happen. And sure enough, he dealt 15 damage to me, and I went from 75 courage down to 50. And if you'll notice, that's pretty much the gist of it. You go back and forth playing attacks until one of you is eliminated. One of your creatures is eliminated. Now, we talked about Mugics. These are pretty self-explanatory like I talked about last time. I'll play one just so you guys know how they work. Let's say I wanted to play Cannon of Casualty. I'm going to say that I want Lord Van Bloot to be the one that casts it. Oops, I totally did that wrong. All right. I want to play Cannon of Casualty. This is the target I want. This is who I want to deal damage to. And I want Lord Van Bloot to cast it. So if you notice, I went from 2 Mugic counters down to 1. My opponent has a chance to respond to it, but if he does nothing to block it or anything like that, I just did an additional 20 damage to him. So again, just like the attacks, Mugics have a wide variety of abilities that you kind of get a sense of how they work and when you want to play them and why. But like I said, this is going to go back and forth until one of these creatures is eliminated. And when it is, it's going to be sent to the general discard pile. That doesn't mean it's eliminated from the game. There are some strategies that allow creatures to be brought back, such as this Mugic, but I won't get into that right now. But that's essentially how the game flows, is each of you are going to take turns going back and forth, playing attacks that you draw from your attack deck, and until one of the creatures is sent to the discard pile. And then you keep doing that until one player is totally out of creatures. Now, after this battle concludes, and let's say I destroyed Somnort, then he would be eliminated, and then I would get to choose a new location that has its own initiative and its own abilities and everything. And then we would go from there, just one battle at a time. So hopefully that helps you guys have a general understanding of how the game works. Again, I know there's like a lot that goes into it. Playing it for so long, it seems simple to me by this point, but I get how it can seem complicated. But hopefully that gives you, again, a good overview of how the game works. And I would recommend you can either jump into a match or go watch one of my gameplay videos on Chaotic Recode, and you'll get a sense of how the game flows and you'll learn from there. That's how I learned back in the day. I just jumped into a match. I just bought the deck, didn't know how to play, and I jumped in and I learned from there. So eventually you will learn, no matter how daunting it may seem to you. But I hope that helps you guys. And if you have any questions, feel free to let me know in the comments and I'll do my best to respond to you guys. But with that, thank you for watching and I'll see you guys next time.